Hi, welcome to the Raising Expert podcast. This is a podcast for founders raising or planning to raise pre-seed equity investment. We provide tips and advice on attracting investment from the right investors. You can listen to interviews with entrepreneurs sharing their investment secrets and experts giving their advice and tips. My name is Finlay. Thanks for joining me. And now, on with the show. Hello there, and welcome to the Raising Expert podcast. Hi there, Moez. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And you?
Good, thank you. No, I'm great, thank you, and I'm excited about our conversation. Moez Seraly from Perfect Cellar. Listen, just as a little backdrop, I've been having conversations with quite a lot of experts who help me or do similar sort of work. But for a number of months now, I've been wanting to get more entrepreneurs in to tell us about their story, and in particular, their fundraising journey. So that's what's really exciting about that, Moez. So thanks for taking the time to come in and talk to me. So let's kick off. Let's understand a little bit about you as an individual. Who are you? What's your background?
Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for having me. I think I appreciate that. Kind of a bit of an eclectic background. I am Moez. I'm the founder and CEO of Perfect Cellar. My background is I'm a Madagascar-born Frenchman. You can probably tell from the accent. Studied in France, but my background is tech and economy. So I did a really successful corporate career, running some major IT and commercial project. And being born in Madagascar, being an entrepreneur was always on the DNA. And the corporate career was almost like a error in the journey. So when I decided to go, I had a few options to go pure tech, consultancy, and so on. But I got very lucky because as I chose the IT and finance career, my friends and my wife's friends actually chose a different path. They became the white coat for the wine industry. So they were working for major chateaus in Bordeaux, Burgundies, and other part of the world, and they spoiled us. So my wine journey has been friends coming and bringing me some amazing wine that was not super expensive, but just hand-picked wine from the right winemaker. And literally, I had my house always filled with wine that I never bought. It's only when I had to buy wine that I realized, especially in the UK, where the late weights and all the others have done such a good job initially bringing a lot of wine, but a lot of them are mass-produced wine from supermarket and so on. So, and I realized that the whole industry was fairly poorly serviced. So I decided, you know what, I can probably bring some light, some freshness into this fairly archaic, old-fashioned industry, and then I created Perfect Cellar, and there we are. So
that's brilliant. That you've kind of done that perfectly to explain the why a little bit as well. The sort of personal drivers as well as the commercial drivers. Can I just rewind a little bit on your life story? So what were the time frames jumping from Madagascar to France and then into the UK? Just to let me understand that. I don't think I've ever known that.
There was if you're on a full journey. I was born in Madagascar. Then when we were when I was 10 or 11, my father decided that he's going to go and take us on holiday in Europe, and decided to stay in Europe for about a year in Portugal. And then the business in Madagascar was going really, really well, so we had to go back. And within 6 months of going back, the country was in 87. The country went completely in turmoil. There was massive riots. So basically we had to hide for about 3 months. And then we kind of, Madagascar is a former French colony. So there are a lot of French schools. They speak Malagasy and French. So we were kind of a native French speaker, and came to Paris, and then literally stayed there until I finished my studies in the late 90s, and I was the last. It was the last year when I finished my study. Was the last year of the compulsory national service in France.
Right.
So
Okay.
basically, before it was still compulsory, so you had to do 10, 12 months with the army, and I had longer hair than now, and I was
Hmm.
fond of them and so on. And honestly, waking up at 5 o'clock, being screamed at for 10 months was not really appealing, and obviously you had to do it. So in France, there is a program where if you have a master's or a 5 year plus a university degree, you can actually pass an officer test,
Okay.
which you pass successfully. And if you pass that, that means that you can actually go to a foreign country, work for a French company for 2 years, paid
Okay.
by the government. So the company doesn't pay you; the government pays you, and but you effectively represent your country abroad.
Sure.
So Total Petroleum knew that I was available, and they headhunted me and gave me their IT department in London. And
Okay.
I was 23. I had a great job. They was paying me a flat with a swimming pool and so
Oh,
on. So like on the complex, if you want. And I had pocket money to
yeah.
spend on beer by the government. So it's a life that you can only love. So and quite frankly, I fell in love with the UK, and I never looked back.
That's brilliant. Thanks for that. And again, it just brings a little bit more flesh to the conversation. We've met each other and enjoyed each other's company and so on, but I've not understood some of those subtleties. So wow, listen, if everyone could get a posting like for that for national service, I think we would probably all sign up, wouldn't we? But you did well to get that. That was pretty cool. Okay, so then let's maybe jump forward to your time in this century, and talk more about Perfect Cellar. You gave us the kind of rationale, the why behind it. There must have come a moment when you actually had to take that leap. So what was the kind of company formation and those very early steps into entrepreneurship? Now you've told us that you had some history of that, family history and the culture as well, but how about you? How did that step actually come
Yeah,
about?
I mean that's kind of always there. Even when I had a corporate career, I was always the only one who no one could ever define. No one could ever tell what I was doing. I never. I started always, apart from the first job where I was the running all the IT and telecoms for Total. After that, I always came with different projects. So when I went to Barclays, I was supposed to be a purchasing manager. So I did that. So I was negotiating my contract, but because I could do it quite quickly, and they were losing and hiring quite a lot of people. And at that time, knowledge management was quite fashionable. So I went to forum with KPMG and so on. So I went back internally. I said, listen, he's a great way for you to not lose all the knowledge when people leave the company. So I've set out the knowledge management program, and it became a company wide thing. So I was running that, and I was doing a lot of things and so on. So basically, it was kind of an hybrid role, and every single company since then, pretty much, I was doing project that really helped some specific problem within the company. So I always identify some major problems, and I told them this is how to fix it. And obviously, they knew it could save them money or get them more sales or retain more people. So they always gave me free hand. So I ended up pretty much doing what I wanted in pretty much 20 years. So I was always creating mini startups
Mm-hmm.
within big organization, if you want. So it was there, and it was only when my daughter was born. I my last actually corporate job was Logica, and CMG, a company called Cision, that had the monopoly of all of the text messaging infrastructure. So,
All right.
when O2, Vodafone, or TNT, or whatever in the world had a mobile network, that they had to buy their their product from a season. The thing is, it didn't last very long because the competition from Asia really started to come. So much cheaper product, doing a lot less software wise, but the competitiveness was quite heavy. So they asked me to look after their factories and their software team, which I did, and I had reduced their lead time from 18 weeks to build the product to 2. So yeah, so when our biggest supplier was Hewlett Packard, HP, and when HP came to see our processes, they say, how can you build that in 2 weeks? So I had a meeting with them. They look at the process, and I went to the CEO and said, listen, I just want to buy that entire team. We're going to outsource it back to you, but by buying them, we own the process, and then we can implement it into our factory. So we outsource. I was offered a great job within a season, so in the marketing side. So I say, yeah, great. But the CMO left, and the new CMO brought in his own guy for the job that I was in. So basically, I told them, listen, I because I had to 2P all of my team, and those people who didn't want to go, they had to give in a decent redundancy package. So I said, listen, my daughter's just born. I'm going to take the redundancy package and going to be a daddy at home for about a year, which I did. And obviously, when I did that, I had a lot of thinking time to decide how to create my business plan. I didn't know anything actually about forming companies, or I'd never done that. So, but in the UK, it's beautiful. It takes an hour to find a company to create. That some company offer you £99 or £199 service, and they do all your files and so on. So I took one of those, and I didn't know anything about e-commerce. So obviously I knew about it because I was in the tech industry, but I've never created myself. So I had to learn about all the legality of selling wine. I had to understand about, and instead of, and at that time, Shopify didn't exist. So I had to literally outsource for an India company to do my development. I had to negotiate with HSBC for the payment gateway. So, the beautiful thing, internet was already there. So, it's quite straightforward. So it took me about, I would say, about a week, 10 days to really learn about everything. The company was already formed and so on. And I literally spoke to my friend, and they said, there is a market here for really good quality wine. Let's start with that. And surprisingly, pretty much every winemaker that I spoke to told me, yes, okay, fine, you can have our wine on exclusivity. And there was some really, because obviously my friend, they're working for some major chateaus, so their reputation precede them, and it's a cartel. The wine industry is a cartel. When you're in it, you're in it. So they knew exactly who to pick. So they did the job for me. I didn't need a buyer. I didn't need anything. So they picked it for me. I actually, the funniest part, the most interesting part was the supply chain, because importing, that was easy. There are some company does it for you, but it's all the pick and pack and so on. And I met this company in Reading. There are some major companies already doing that, but I didn't know. I was not aware of them. So I went to a pick and pack that was not too far from me, and they didn't do alcohol. So I said, listen, I will help you get your license. I will help that, but you have to do me a flat fee for storage, pick and pack, and delivery. You take care of the lot because I don't have time. So they said yes. And once that was placed, it literally went. And within a month of starting the company, literally it was I had an imperfect cellar done. I'd hired I paid £200 to have my first logo done, and so on. So it was like, literally, it was not great, but it was what it was. And within 2 months, I was in 2013, so on, and within a month of starting, I was called by an incubator in London. Okay. So that was kind of that started the whole journey for me.
Brilliant. These stories within stories are brilliant. I totally appreciate it, and that natural entrepreneurship just comes through. Even that deal with the that packet bic,
Yeah.
to negotiate on those terms. It just shows sort of a very natural entrepreneur in you, and in those other roles employed in fairly big organizations. I think you were acting as what they call an entrepreneur, so being very entrepreneurial, but within a big organization. And we're going to talk about the investment piece in a second, but actually you became very investable, moving that whole team across to HP. You and that team were seen as very investable. So that's interesting. Listen, I realise we've maybe not quite heard the elevator pitch from you. People are now probably getting a good understanding of what Perfect Cellar is, but how do you now describe it? It's maybe not what you described, how you would have described it when you first launched it. What's in a nutshell, how do you describe it now?
You mean today?
Yeah, today, now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, today, in a nutshell, what we do is we combined wine and technology into one house. And what does it mean for the end user? Is the wine element, as I said, we source only exceptional quality wine that we can sell for a very good price, from as little as £10 or £12, but they're made exceptionally. So there isn't a bottle that is not made exceptionally well in our portfolio. And then what we do is we use technology to make life easier for you to be able to kind of go into the journey of finer wine. We build a virtual cellar for you. We give you some tools to recommend wine to you. We launched some technology with our tasting box where you can have an at-home tasting using Amazon Alexa. So literally, I'm bringing everything that my friend did for me, my onology friend did to me. I digitalized it, and I'm making it available to anyone. So I'm telling people, if you want to buy good quality wine, you don't have to break the bank, and effectively you can have all the services so it's basically bringing the fine wine experience to the mass through technology. That's how we describe it.
No, I like that. That's the soundbite, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we'll capture that. And the fact is, we're not all as lucky as you that we don't all have those friends.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what you've been able to do is capture that knowledge and the facilitation for people like me who could maybe go, crikey, what would be a good wine for me or for friends or for a party or whatever it is. So yeah, I get it. That's brilliant. And listen, we'll share this in the show notes and make sure that everyone knows how to find themselves involved with you at Perfect Cellar. So that's only normal. You've given us some great high points, I would say, but as an entrepreneur, I know how challenging that is. So depending on how much you want to share, I dare say there's been some low points on that journey as well. Yeah. And that's often what's interesting for people listening is, crikey, here's Moez and these successes. But what have been the highs and the lows over that period?
The highs were, as I said, within a month I was taken by an incubator. It was effectively a couple of founders that did really well in the e-commerce space, in the retargeting space, and they just acquired a really smart technology, and within 4 years they made it a 1.5 billion valued company. Right. The problem was that the beauty was that they loved wine, they loved luxury goods, and so on. So they decided to create an incubator to have the portfolio of product that I would kind of put under one umbrella and give like shared resources, shared finance, shared marketing, etc., etc. So it's lower cost for us, but they can then kind of help with funding if you want. Then that was great. So that was a really high point because I was in a flash offices in London with a shop and a cellar that I created. It was amazing. The problem was that they had never actually any intention to fund the growth of those business. It was effectively a little bit of a side. We're basically there to fulfill the love of their the thing that I love, if you want. So they were quite happy. They didn't want us to grow too far because we didn't need them. So it was a bit of a wasted journey for about 3-4 years because But the great thing is because they were such a big organization or growing, and they were really good at fundraising and so on at different level, their and it was very high luxury product. It was the Aston Martin suits. It was things like that they took on board and
Okay.
so on.
Okay.
And I met phenomenal people, and because obviously I had wine, when they wanted to pitch, I was their man, their go-to man. So I would run a dinner for them. I would talk about the wine. I'll wow them, especially with the French accent and the backstory and some exclusive rare wine and so on. But that literally allowed me to create a really great network of high net worth individual that became my customers, and I built a relationship with them. So that was the really high point. The low point was that as any company that grows so fast, for them, I'm talking about them, they actually didn't realize that there is a point where you don't have the skill set. You need different skill sets, especially when it comes to dealing with big investors like VCs and so on. And they were very, very casual with their approach. So the American VC that they took literally realized that they didn't manage the business well at all. They were still kind of loss making, although they were making 50 million plus turnover. Because money was flowing, investment was easy to come by, so they just spend, and increase. So that gave an opportunity to a VC company that I didn't treat very well to effectively do a what they call they shut down the business and then reopened it.
So like a phoenix, yeah.
And there is a technical expression for that. But effectively, they did that. So the whole. The whole house of cards failed, if you want.
Okay.
Every business that they had closed down. Luckily for me, I've managed to extract Perfect Cellar separately, and I continue to Perfect Cellar, and then I repurposed it into a company called Sip Wine, which was a technology-based company for younger generation. It's augmented reality and so on, and that literally was I get some amazing support from David Gower, the cricketer, also from some CEO of FTSE 100 companies and so on. So we had some really good angel. The business was going really, really well, which is really high, and we were kind of we had some really good space in tech news and so on, and I built a phenomenal team. Sadly, for us, we had a very unfortunate journey, because the first raise we did, first big raise we did, was about $1 million. We got the commitment from our existing investor, two of them, both of them, and that's really unfortunate. Both of their businesses went under a month before the money was due. And I knew them very, very well, so I know he was not. So anyway, that really made us start again from scratch, because obviously we started to spend the money and so on. And then the second time round, the next year, I managed to get a 1.5 million from a family office, and that was all done and so on. And then as the first sign of the money was due around February, March 2020.
Okay. That terrible date that's now
exactly. So
lodged in our memories.
And we were highly geared. We were growing really well. We were highly geared, and we needed that money to take to kind of and that money, obviously, because of COVID, never came, and I had to close down the business, because obviously we were quite heavily indebted by then. We took some convertibles and so on, and that was on the basis of that money coming. And obviously, with that money not coming, then we became insolvent. It was really hard. That was probably the lowest point, I would say, because not only we built something phenomenal, with augmented reality, it was really something quite incredible. And COVID happened. I closed the business, and within a month of COVID happening, the whole wine industry exploded online.
Yes.
So I was watching that from the sofa. I didn't know what I was still thinking about what else to do, because obviously that was probably the lowest point through the journey, because it's the second time around, and both times I had something really tangible. It just I couldn't control a 1.5 billion company going under. I couldn't control COVID, So it's literally it was really bad luck, and I couldn't control two of my biggest supporters going under. So it's just literally it's a it's a journey. And I watched, and I was really looking to go back into consultancy and so on during COVID and so on. And talking to actually my dad and my chairman, which was the former CEO of Royal Sun Alliance at the time, and so on, and talking to a lot of investors. I call every single investor, obviously. I felt quite bad for, but luckily there were a large majority were EIS. I think so. Basically, they could recover.
The risk was covered a little bit. Yeah,
they recover about 60-70% of their investment overall. So it's not so bad, but not everybody did. But and I think a couple of them that I really trusted told me, the whole industry is exploding, and there is no one that have the same combination of wine knowledge and supply chain, commercial and technical than you. So why don't you think what you can do? And I called the administrators and I said, listen, how much would it take for me to, how much it would take for you to do the process? Because no one was putting us under during COVID. So, it was there. It was like, ceased trading, but it was not going under. And obviously there was no asset, there was no money or anything, a bit some wine and so on. So, and they said, yeah, listen, we can do it for X amount. And I say, if I can raise that money the way we structure it is that I will make you an offer under a new structure that will buy the names, the database of client, the all of the wine, and that basically is what I will pay to the oil company, subject to all the creditors' approval and so on. And you would that basically will be your fees. Because and they said yes. So I've managed to call a few people and say, listen, I'm starting from scratch. Here we go. I'm going to use elbow grease. I'm going to do everything. I've outsourced the supply chain, so it's going to be me and half a logistic person to manage the thing. And we restart from. And I had a website and I had the perfect sell name, so I didn't really have to spend money on branding website or anything. Just a little bit of tech. And so I got 4 people who collectively gave me 10, 10, 10, and 20 under SCIS. Under SCIS.
New business, yeah.
So basically, so even more production. And we bought the thing, and literally for about a year and a half, I utilized that to just sell the wine that we had and, convince a few French winemakers to give me exclusive wine on, especially Bordeaux, Burgundy, on consignment. So I only pay them as we sell. They've agreed to it. And then we did about 100K turnover the first year, got it to about 250 the second. And then when 2022, when COVID was passed, because I told them, I'm not going to build any tech. I'm not going to build anything fancy because I have absolutely no idea what the world is going to look like when this COVID lava is gone.
Yeah.
It could go back to how it was. It could be new and so on. And it's in late 2022. I think that's when we met, early 2023, that we decided that now we understand the ecosystem.
Yeah.
And then we're starting to do some raising, building tech, and I think in about a year and so, we've moved so much. It's been phenomenal. So. And there we are today. So I think we're now on the verge of going to that next stage where I think we're at the beginning of the hockey stick.
Yeah, no, totally. But firstly, thanks for sharing that, because you told us about highs and lows, and I appreciate you being able to go into some of those lows and being totally candid about it. Because not everyone likes to, that moment when you're back on the couch and COVID's hit, and that is quite a dark place actually. But I think your nature comes through again. You can strike a deal, fantastic deal. You saw the opportunity, obviously with some support from trusted advisors, your father, and so on as well. So that's brilliant. And yeah, you've kind of started that first part of the fundraising story, which I was hoping that you could share with us. So you've told us about your small group of SEIS investors in the new company, and then, as you say, I've helped you a little bit through the sort of seed stage. I agree, you're now the business is in such a place that really you're probably looking at a Series A fairly soon to really superpower that growth. But maybe tell us a little bit more about the seed round or rounds, because I think quite a lot of the listeners, that's where they are. They're maybe about to start or just doing it. So, if you're happy to share any of that, that would be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, the initial, obviously, for me, the initial part was trying to get the backers that I had to either come back in or to make introductions. That was the low-hanging fruit, if you want. But that goes only so far because until you get that critical mass, there is always a bit of nervousness to get too many people making introduction, because they just want to make sure you're solid enough, because people don't like introducing an investment to friend and then they lose money. So it's kind of it's probably one of the worst things. So you can tell people were introducing, but not like as much as wide as their black book is, if you want, and that's fair enough, because they are very seasoned investors and they've got their many eggs in their basket. And then I think what was really interesting, which is actually when I met you as well, is that I think especially for new founders and so on, to really know that if you're lucky enough to have people with a black book, great. That's why I say that you should start. But I think working with you has been quite great, because you made introduction to people and actually them invested, but their friend that they brought in invested, and their friend actually. So suddenly, with just a couple of introductions from you, suddenly the network grew to about 5 or 6 people. And it's amazing. And I think that for me has been helpful. And the other part is that no matter how good you are, no matter how many times you've done it, I'm sure you remember the first deck that I've sent you compared to the latest one I've got, is effectively, having, someone like yourself who sees so many different decks and so many different industries and so on, just add that for me, that's very helpful, because you gave me some really good insight about what specifically the investors want. And sometimes you as a founder, you tend to almost look at your own shadow with too much praise, if you want. So you're so into it that you sometimes forget that those very little point that effectively actually matters to the people reading it. So I think that was very, very helpful. So I would always say to people, build your network. I think go to as many networking events you can, especially the charity angle. For me, was phenomenal, by the way.
Right.
I didn't mention that probably brought the biggest part of my black book, and yourself. Before yourself in the previous venture, I used somebody similar. I think it's a fairly straightforward process, because you've done all the hard work in building the trust with the investor. And
totally. It's a bit of a shortcut.
Yeah, this is a massive shortcut. Sorry, it's a
yeah. Thanks for that, and I appreciate you kind of name checking me in that. I think coming back to something you said about the advice piece, it's natural. It's human nature that you are fairly certain in that what you're offering is great, that otherwise you wouldn't have done it, you wouldn't have got it there. But if I see, and this is a generalization, that people get fixated about talking about the product or the service or the offering, rather than actually realizing that they have to make it attractive to investors. They might well be going to purchase your service as well, but it's about packaging up you and your team, the size of the market, the growing market, rather than, this is a great wine or e-commerce platform. It's actually about the business as a whole. But and I've seen you sort of evolve through that a little bit, and I don't know how many numbers, different iterations of the deck we've seen now. It's quite a few. You're very good at that. You keep pushing on.
Thank you. I mean, that, for me, just to exactly use an analogy, I'll use an analogy I used when I did my first negotiation training when I went to Barclays and I moved from technical to commercial. And this guy's kind of showed me his hand and he asked me to describe very much in detail what I was seeing. And obviously, I was seeing the back end of my hand. So I told him I'm seeing creases, I'm seeing the fingers and so on. And he said, "What?" He said, "This is the same hand, right? What I am seeing, I'm seeing none of those creases. I'm seeing a lifeline. I'm seeing a triangle. I'm seeing the three part of my finger, and so on. So I'm seeing a pink side. You're seeing a brown side, or whatever." And so he said, "Look, it's funny. It's exactly the same hand, but you see. So so if you are going to talk to me about the end and trying to tell me something, and you just look at it the way you see it, and you don't pay attention of what I'm saying, basically what you're going to tell me is completely irrelevant, because whatever you tell me, I cannot relate to it because what I'm seeing." So I think there is I think you helped a lot, and I think it's no matter how good you are, how clever you are, how successful you are, and so on. I think it's just human nature, especially when you're really involved and you're busy and so on, just to look at it from your perspective. And if you just take a little bit of time and you don't have just to try to think about, okay, what matters to that person in front of me, and I think it's really funny because I've been extremely successful at that in my corporate career. So when so now, obviously, even now, after doing probably about 100 pitches and plus and so on and so forth, I sometimes find myself less and less, but I still done it a couple of times even this year, I would say. And funny enough, is the only two times where I didn't get the investment is when I made that mistake. Is I got really bogged down into blowing my own trumpet and the trumpet of what we do, and I didn't take the time to say, okay, what is that person really looking for? And one of the investor, I probably wouldn't got the investment from him, but if I did take the time, I would have pitched it very differently, because he built his business by acquiring company in his sector that were in distress. So he basically he strategically grew by taking people in distress, buying them cheap, and expanding his market share, and he made a fortune out of it. So obviously, if you know that, then you know that valuation, you have to give him I should have spent more time, for example, for him to really explain to him how his money is going to multiply by 5. And obviously I didn't, and I kind of really talked about the services. And when he looked at my turnover and he looked at my valuation, that's all he looked at. He completely forgot about the multiplier on his investor, because I didn't spend enough time. So for him, he just looked at it black and white. He said, "You're not worth what you're saying is," because he's used to buying company on a very, very, very cheap. Obviously, valuation is always going to be a problem with him. So but it's funny. It just shows how you make. But that's the first thing I would say to any investor, any founder. I think rule 101: be aware. Do your research of who you're talking to, and during the early conversation, really try to assess what matters to them. If you get the hang of that, then you win.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant, and I've seen you do that. You are very good at it, and thanks for sharing the tip about the hand, both sides of the hand. That's brilliant. I'll use that myself if you don't mind.
Of course,
when helping people. Listen, we've had a great conversation. You've given us some real nuggets in here, Moez, and I always finish these with a question, which is totally on everyone's lips just now, but it's so important to you. Now, we could almost do another podcast just on this alone for you. How is technology, and in particular AI, going to help your business or impact your business in the foreseeable future?
I mean, for us, the whole purpose now is to offer a very personalized service to people. As you mentioned earlier, I use my friend, and not everybody's got that. So I am trying to become all my customers' friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to become that guy that I had, but to do that on a slightly larger scale. And AI is beautiful because what AI, tech, obviously we use a lot of tech, as I mentioned earlier, but we AI particularly is a fast track. If you use it properly, it allows us to analyze the behavior and the likes and the dislikes of our customers a lot faster. So we can actually make some very personalized recommendations. So instead of going through a lot of algorithm and a lot of ifs and whatever, we can actually learn a lot more about that. But also, once we know what you like and dislike and so forth, then we can then push the right content to you. So effectively, we can help you learn, because nobody have time to go on a wine course. And so basically, if, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. If we through AI, we analyze that we can do it without AI, but it's a lot more complex and expensive. So for example, I realize you only buy Malbecs and Merlots, and there is Argentina and Bordeaux and a bit of Italy and so on. Then we can pinpoint the thing you like, and we can tell you, and then send you some information, or during your journey say, here's some more information about Merlot and so on. And by the way, if you like that, here's something else you might like because it's very similar, and that's the history. So it's great. And then next time you're going to be talking to some friends, you're going to be able to say, Andrea, that's a Merlot, and you'll be able to tell them fact about Merlot. So suddenly, without even knowing it, by just giving you information about yourself that you kind of subconsciously know, but just making it explicit to you, I think your connection to us will be. So in a short answer, what AI will do is, I think it will allow us to do a lot more in a much, much faster time. And for us, it translates to understanding the customer, recommending more wine. And there's some piece of tech that I cannot tell more, but one of the biggest one is basically we tend to analyze your preferences based on what you tell us or what you bought. But with AI, I think in the next 2 to 3 months, I'll be able to let you tell me exactly a particular bottle that you like. And with the use of AI, I say, if you like that bottle, here's the wine that I recommend for you. So I think it's a phenomenal technology.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a few others in my sort of domain that are slightly worried about it, but I think I'm with you. It's going to make things faster and easier and better for the consumers. And listen, if you can make much better wine suggestions for me, but let's be honest, that human driver, if I can look or appear more knowledgeable at a dinner party around Malbec, that value actually is it is. I think it's just normal. I'm honest enough to admit that. Listen, Moez, that's been a great conversation. I hope you can come back and tell us about those new technologies and maybe how you're proceeding in your fundraising journey as well. I really appreciate how much you've shared with us. I think listeners will really, really value that. So thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Right, Moez. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.